All right. Hey, Stansell team, and welcome back to the Stansell Blueprint podcast. I am back in the host seat, but first, just want to say a big thank you to Jim Flynn and Miss Haley for stepping in recently and doing an amazing job covering key topics like heat safety and ADA. Those are really powerful episodes. So if you haven't watched those, make sure you go back and tune in on those. They have great insights. But I'm super excited to launch this special episode during our inaugural Health and Safety Week. It's running August 4th through the 8th, 2025. Whether you've been with Stansell for a while or you're newer to the team, I hope you can see and feel just how deeply rooted health and safety are in our culture. And this week, we're going deeper beyond the policies, the checklists, and compliance. Our theme is Beyond the Build, and it's all about the why behind health and safety. When people connect to that deeper purpose, it changes how they show up, not just for the job, but for themselves and each other. And I'm grateful to be joined virtually today by two fantastic guests. Of course, our safety manager, Jim Flynn, is back, and Nikki Campbell from the Flourish Group, a wellness expert with a wealth of knowledge. And I just want to thank you both so much for being here. Are you guys ready?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us, Angelica.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's jump in. So I'd love to start with a question for both of you because I think it reflects a common mindset. Health and safety are often seen as separate, and even more often as tasks we have to do rather than benefits we get to experience. So, Jim, I'll start with you. How do you define health and safety, and how can we start seeing them as connected and personally meaningful?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually don't really want to define them separately because I actually think the two absolutely go hand in hand. Health is about your well-being, and so is safety. So when we think of safety, we think about protecting obviously our superintendents, the trade partners on our job sites, but also Stansell. And you think about your well-being, well, you're kind of protecting your job site in that regard too, right? But your job site is your home base, and protecting yourself and your family and your income, because all of those are impacted, whether it's safety or your personal health. So I think they also have a key ingredient in common, which is they're both best served being proactive on both fronts, not reactive. I think we would all agree on that. And from a safety standpoint, I liken it to wearing your PPE on job sites is like wearing your seatbelt in the car. A long time ago, it was getting in the habit of doing it. I think back in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, it was unheard of to wear seatbelts, and all of a sudden there was this big push on it. And now, if you look at people today, most get in their car and put on their seatbelt and don't even think about it because they're trying to be proactive. And driving in a car without your seatbelt now is illegal. And OSHA looks at the same thing on a job site from a safety standpoint, that if you're not protecting yourself, not protecting other people, well, you can get cited for that, and there can be other consequences. So I just think at the end of the day, seatbelts save lives. Proactiveness on safety and looking out for your own well-being, I think it literally saves lives.
Yeah, I love that. Nikki, what about you?
So, like Jim, I think they're intertwined. It's like the infinity symbol, right? Like they just, when one is good, the other is probably good. I love that construction companies like Stansell put a focus on health as it relates to safety, because to your point, we could talk about procedures and processes and OSHA, and that's all great. You absolutely have to know that. But sometimes for people to really get it, they have to understand why. Why do you want me to be healthy? And how does that relate to safety? So a couple of things, sleep and stress, those are two things that impact both of those elements. So if you are not sleeping, if you are not managing stress, you're just physically not up for being safe on the work site, but also you're not making decisions that are safety oriented, right? Your decision-making capacity, your ability to think through a crisis, something happens and what's the protocol, they're all diminished when you are not managing stress, you're not eating healthy, you're not sleeping. And that's just biology. That is how your body works. And so to be healthy means to be safe. And I think, Jim, you put it in a really good perspective about, this is about your family too and your finances. I worked with a trucking company years ago, and they were able to take their 401k data and see that when a person withdrew money from their 401k early, that there was a direct correlation to accidents with their trucks because of the financial stress, right? So it very much shows up in other ways. So I think there's no way you can disconnect them. You can only reinforce why health is so critical to safety.
Absolutely. Yeah, great answers, both of you. And, to the point of being proactive versus reactive, I heard a saying recently that stuck with me, and it said, if you wait for a wake-up call, it's already too late. And we actually see that all the time, right? People wait until something goes wrong before they feel like making a change. And that's actually a big reason why we chose Beyond the Build as our theme for this week. So, because when people connect to a deeper why, they tend to lead and live differently. So, Nikki, what comes to mind for you when you hear that? And then do you ever see this in your work?
So I read a book years ago, Start With Why, and it was one of the best descriptions of motivation, right? So if you have a really strong, compelling reason why you want to do something, you are more likely to achieve it. So when you think about, being healthy and going back to the family, correlation, or, your friends, or whoever is important to you in your life, if that's your why, you are going to be much more likely to stick to that goal or to achieve it. So that's an intrinsic goal and motivator versus I just want to get healthy because I have a class reunion coming up, right? That's a very extrinsic motivation that probably won't sustain those healthy habits. I would also argue that lots of little indicators before you get to the big red flag, and then it's too late. So I think paying attention to your body, especially as we get older, we just chalk it up to, oh, it's just, I'm older and that's why that hurts. Or, I'm winded going up the stairs. Well, I'm older, things like that. So I think there's lots of little things that should be looked at that you can change. You can change those before it gets to that big crisis of your health.
Yeah. I joked with somebody, I guess it's not really funny, but they were saying that it's too hard to implement healthy habits or to make changes. And I was like, what's harder is death. Like, just speaking candidly, right? Like, don't you want to be here and experience all the different beautiful things that life has? And that starts with taking care of yourself, right? So don't wait for it. Jim, to you from the safety side, is that reactive mindset something you come across, and how can we shift it towards something a little bit more intentional?
Yeah, definitely. And Nikki's comments were spot on. That is a fantastic book, by the way, by Simon Sinek, I believe, wrote the Start With Why. Great book. There's another book called Take the Stairs that there's a comment in that book that always stuck with me. So anything worthwhile in life that you're going to achieve, whether it's a personal goal or Angelica, you said about it's really hard to get in good habits and exercise, right? But the author of that book said, look, you're going to pay a price. You can either pay it now or you can pay it later with interest. And that always resonated with me because you can, it is going to be hard, but it's going to be a lot harder if you do this the wrong way and wait or procrastinate, right? But yeah, and safety in general, far too often we're reactive on things. Right now, I commend Stansell because especially over the last half a year or so, we've seen our area supervisors, our superintendents really get intentional about getting proactive and ahead of these things, right? With things like wearing our PPE and putting our banners and signage up and carrying out toolbox talks and putting our safety stations out where people can see them and use them, getting our certifications in compliance. These are all proactive in nature, and I commend them for doing that. But in safety in general, there is a mindset of being too reactive too often, and that's because people still to this day view safety as a chore. And I defend our superintendents, right? Or anybody in construction for that matter. You're juggling a ton of tasks out there and trying to stay on and quote unquote babysit other people to try to get them to do their thing and wear the right PPE. That can probably not be so fun, right? But we have to take the mindset, and again, I commend the people at Stansell because we're doing that, but take it from seeing it as a chore to caring. You're switching one C word out for the other. If it's a chore, who likes to do chores? I haven't met that person yet. So if you find them, let me know. If you care, you're going to be way more inclined to do it and do it willingly and try to have some fun with it. And I think that goes all the way back to what Nikki was saying at the beginning of this question, which is it does start with the why. Don't do it because you have to. Get to a point where you're working safe and you're telling your partners out there to work safe because you care about them and they have a family to go home to that's counting on them to physically be there and financially help support that family. And if we can switch that mindset, not just at Stansell, but just everywhere in where safety applies, then I think we will truly meet the definition of being proactive and everybody's better off in a proactive world. Angelica, I always tell the people at Stansell, look, accidents do happen. But man, if something happens on our job site, make sure you can look at yourself in the mirror and look at your colleagues and all the people that are counting on you and say, this was a honest to God accident. There's nothing we could have done. It was a freak thing, as opposed to going, oh my gosh, I could have said something. I could have done something. I could have warned something. Don't live with that regret. That would be a terrible feeling, not just for them, but for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points, Jim. And then another, follow-up to that is, have you seen a moment when someone's why for safety really clicked, like when it became personal instead of just like a policy?
Yeah, unfortunately, the people that you don't have to twist their arm to get compliance on safety usually have one thing in common, and that's usually because they experienced something or saw something that was actually pretty horrific in nature.
Yeah.
Somebody getting maimed or, God forbid, killed. Every person I've ever talked to that's had to live through that or seen it, you don't have to remind them to why they're putting on their PPE, why they're going to work safe. And it really shouldn't get to that point where you have to experience something so badly to do that. But look, our people in construction are very tough people, physically, mentally. But what comes with that is also sometimes a false sense of confidence too, right? Overconfidence. But having those situations, whether you lived on a job site where something bad happened, or I bring forward a safety video where it tells the story of somebody that died tragically, this helps bring an element of humility and reality to people that have to have it. I always tell people all the time, like in safety, look, construction workers don't need to be taught as much as they need to just be reminded, because in safety, if you get too comfortable, that's when bad things can happen.
Yeah.
I also think it just speaks to a level of professionalism. Like, look, you wear these uniforms and that this is our uniform, a hard hat, safety glasses. And I mean, I'd ask you both, like, who wants to get on the airplane where the pilot is wearing flip-flops, Hawaiian shirt, a ball cap that's backwards, or a police officer whose gun is not holstered properly? I could go through all the professions where it's like, this is how we should look, and it's our uniform, and there really should be no exceptions to it. And at Stansell, we always talk about being the best, and I think we truly are. I know a lot of people here think we are, but if you're going to be the best, truly, it starts with looking the part and looking the best. And I just liken it to this is just how it is. This is what we look like, and we're damn proud of it too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. And then Nikki, I imagine that same kind of shift happens in wellness too. Have you seen a moment when someone changed their approach to health because they found that deeper connection, and then what helped them get there?
So yes, unfortunately, it's oftentimes when something happens, when there is a blood test that comes back, or they're put on blood pressure medication and cholesterol medication, and they've never been on medication before, and now this is a reality. So I think yes, that will move people, but I also think it is seeing things happen to other people.
Hmm.
So like to your point, Jim, about making it more personal, right? And if you, as somebody who's in their 50s, I see a woman in her 40s passed away, and here I kind of know the circumstances. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is more real to me,
Mhm.
versus something, if somebody happens to someone in their 80s or 90s, right? So I think it's personal experience. I also think it is kind of outside encouragement. So and it's a fine line, right? Because you can't force somebody to make a change, but when you have an encouraging circle who supports you and wants you to be healthy, that is such a game changer, because people who make a change feel very isolated sometimes, because everyone around them is still doing all the fun things that they want to do, right? They're still going to happy hour, they're still eating out, 4 nights a week, and they're trying to make a change. So really having a good support network, being aware of kind of what's going on in your age group, that will help people along. And then it's just about consistency. It's just about helping somebody. They're scared, right? They get the blood test back, or some kind of indicator, but how do you keep them going, right? Because if they've never made a change for their health and now they have to do it, all of a sudden, how do you support them? How do you help them make a consistent change?
Yeah, speaking of changes, I'll stick with you, Nikki. If someone's looking for just like three simple things that they could implement or start doing right now to improve their health, what would you give them?
So, two things you can do in 15 minutes. One, go to bed 15 minutes earlier. And two, get 15 minutes of exercise. So, I just read a study recently that it is less about intensity of exercise and more about consistency. So, even if you only have 15 minutes a day, if you do that every day, it's as beneficial as working out really hard for an hour 2 or 3 times a week, right? But we have this mindset of, well, if I don't have a half an hour or an hour, then it's not even worth it, right? It's that all or nothing mentality. We have to change that. We have to change that conversation. We also have to redefine, or my third thing is drink enough water. Yeah, and I don't need to tell you guys that, because you know where you're located and just the safety risk there.
Yeah.
But as you're looking at like what those small changes are, I want us to redefine what exercise is, because it's not always going to the gym, it's not running, it's not CrossFit. Those are great. Playing
Hmm.
with your kids, walking your dog, um, doing chores around the house. I will put my Apple Watch on, like other as the activity when I'm cleaning, vacuuming, and you would be surprised. Your heart rate will go up. You're using muscles that maybe you haven't used in a while. You'll be sore the next day. Things like that. People are really hard on themselves, and their expectations are, I have to run, or I have to go to a cardio class or be on the Peloton bike for an hour every day. It's not it. Like just 15 minutes of something that just gets your heart rate up a little bit.
Yeah, great advice. People, it always frustrates, like, you don't have to overcomplicate it. You really don't.
Right, right.
Right. Yeah, no, great advice. Thanks, Nikki. And then Jim, turning to you, like from the safety side, what would you say are some simple, realistic changes that someone could start doing to implement safety?
Well, I think it's gonna, even though uh, Nikki had talked about the health element, I think they are intertwined in this case as well, where it's habit forming. It's easy to fall out of habits. If you're laying on the couch, it's hard to get off of it. If
Mm.
you're moving, then it's hard to stop, right? So, and same with safety. I would suggest first and foremost killing two birds with one stone with toolbox talks to our superintendents, because toolbox talks can speak to a safety hazard that's on the job that day with the trade partners or that week. But it's also an opportunity for our superintendents to set the tone with anybody on that construction site about what the standards are for PPE compliance. And again, that's getting ahead of it, right? Wearing the hard hat, wearing the safety glasses. I would say the second one is to lead by example. From a superintendent standpoint, you don't have a chance really of getting your trade partners on the job sites to comply with PP unless of course they have a passion and their why is behind why they're doing it. It's not going to happen for you if you're not leading by example by looking the part to start with. If you have your stuff on, well, then you have credibility. And then the third one is just if you see something on a job site, say something. You don't have to be a safety expert. Usually in safety, if it looks wrong, something probably is wrong, and you should say something. And where I find a lot of people in our industry fall short is that they're afraid to have these conversations. And it's far worse in their head of how that conversation is going to go than it actually goes, from my experience at least. And I'm going to go back to that book. Now I sound like I'm selling it, but Take the Stairs is a really good book. But in there, he says, look, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be nervous, but go scared. Go in nervous. But don't use that as an excuse to not do it at all. Yeah. So in this case, when you're talking to your trade partners about, hey, I need you to wear your stuff, you can be nervous about it, but still have that conversation. And you guys know this. How you talk to somebody matters. If you go in and rip their head off, they're not going to hear what you're saying. They're going to get defensive, right? It's human nature. But if you go in from a place of compassion and just say, hey, listen, I know it's hot out today, but I got to have you put that hard hat on because I care too much about you to have anything happening out here today. And if you need a minute to cool off, come on in the Connex. I've got air conditioning. I got a cold water for you. But thanks for, helping us out and protecting yourself. I haven't had that conversation go bad for me yet, knock on wood. And I don't think it's going to go bad for our other people either. So I just would encourage them to have these conversations. And again, it's all about getting ahead of it, proactive. That would be my top 3 tips.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jim. All right, so this has been a really great conversation. Thank you both. Really appreciate it. We also wanted to bring in some questions that the Stansell team submitted. So I just grabbed a handful. I'm going to pull these up real quick. And just a few here that I think our team would love to hear y'all's feedback on. So here we go. All right, Nikki, we're going to start with you. Someone shared that they're working 50 plus hours a week and have personal responsibilities outside of work. How can they realistically incorporate exercise and healthy eating into such a busy schedule?
So with the exercise, I would again say reset what your expectation is of exercise, right? So 15 minutes, I would argue most of us can find 15 minutes in the day. Stop scrolling on social media. That might be one of the ways. Get up a little earlier, go to bed a little earlier. Just it's some of the habits, like Jim said, it's just habits of getting into it. But again, what do you do in your daily activities that your routine, that you can easily slide in 15, 20 minutes of exercise. There's another book, James Clear, Atomic Habits. And so the brain is wired for routine. Half of our day is routine that we just don't even think about, right? Good habits and bad habits. Where in that routine can you put in a new habit? Because your brain will get used to that, like addition, right? Like a stop on the road, versus trying to come up with a whole new routine to do these things. So for eating healthy, so on Sundays, maybe you go to church, you come home, and you would normally, sit down on the couch and, catch up on something on Netflix. Can you put Netflix on and do a little bit of meal prep, right? Can you just get a couple of things ready for dinner, not full meals every day of the week, but can you plan your lunches, know where you're going to be and what I need to eat? So it's those little things, just find the opportunities to squeeze them in. And because, like Jim said, once you get in the habit, it feels good, right? And so then you'll find more time for it because you've maybe pulled back on some of the unhealthy habits, and you can fill that with the healthy ones. So start small, start realistically. I wouldn't even say do both healthy eating and exercise at the same time. Get one going. Get, your meal planning or prep going, and then, because you're going to start to feel better when you're eating better, then get that exercise, put in there somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, the saying, like, you can't outrun a bad diet. Start with eating healthy. My recommendation.
That's right.
Great advice. Thank you, Nikki. All right, Jim. There seems to have been a renewed focus on safety at Stansell. What are some of the specific steps the company has taken to emphasize that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's an astute observation. First and foremost, our leadership supports safety here 100%, and that's always existed. But and it's really dead in the water if it didn't. But we have put a new sense of renewed energy into it. Starts with certifications. I really commend our superintendents. They took their certifications seriously and got them all in order, renewed, so that they're current. From the OSHA 30 to forklift to first aid to aerial lift. And the superintendents are out there on a moving train. It's not easy to do things on a computer or your phone from a construction site, but they all deemed it important. And I really commend them for it. Putting our safety stations out there with fire extinguisher, first aid kits, and SDS. They've made those important and moving around so they're accessible. The toolbox talks, we're seeing some renewed energy there. And again, that speaks to getting ahead of things on safety instead of reacting. It's a great opportunity to not only cover safety topics and keep everybody safe, but it's a good place to have some camaraderie built too. I mean, at the end of the day, our superintendents are working with a team of people, right? 3-week look aheads have been definitely resurrected. It's interesting because you go, well, that's a schedule thing. But in safety, if you're scheduling 10 trade partners to work on top of each other, then it is a safety hazard. So there's a lot of thought put into like, okay, I don't want to have these 2 trade partners working at the same time because that actually could lead to some unsafe conditions. So again, I commend the superintendents for thinking through that. And then the last thing I would add is the videos we put on Teams proactively. We put a lot of safety content on our Teams channel for the superintendents. If they're not watching it, I encourage them to do so because the videos, Nikki said, who doesn't have 15, 20 minutes to work out or exercise? I agree. We have no excuse for that. Well, we also have 3 to 5 minutes to watch a safety video, right? And they can actually be used as the toolbox talk. So we do that about 3 times a week and try to give them topics that they can benefit from. And I would say those are all the things that we're actively working on to not only bring safety to the forefront, but keep it there.
Yeah. I mean, you could also watch videos or listen to something while walking. So you could have it stack there too. Love it. Thanks, Jim. All right, Nikki. One person said, I thought Smoothie King was healthy. Turns out it's not. What are some actually good for you foods that still taste good and keep you full?
So when you gave me some of the questions, I was like, well, this is a loaded question because what's tastes good to some people does not taste good to others. So I would say if you're looking for the sweetness that like the Smoothie King, first of all, make your own, right? Because then you can control the ingredients that go into it. So simple fruit, Greek yogurt, a little bit of protein powder if that's what you want, or just the fruit and Greek yogurt. So have some control over the ingredients. I would say fruit, dark chocolate. If you're going to eat a carbohydrate, look for the carbohydrate with the most whole grains in it and the most fiber, and it tends to be more flavorful, right? So like a rye bread or, a 12-grain bread is going to have more flavor. It's going to have more substance. It's going to keep you full for a longer period of time, but it's good for you, right? And you're still getting the bread that you want, right? You can still have carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are not bad. It's just the choices you make. As far as food that is in like the grocery store, 3 things I tell people: look at the amount of fat, saturated fat, sodium, and added sugars. So in general, and look at fiber too. Your daily recommendation for sodium is like 1,500 milligrams. It's not a lot. So it's sometimes hard to do that. But again, if you have high blood pressure, start looking at labels. Should I be eating this? It has, it's pretty high in sodium. It has 30% of my sodium for the day. Salt tastes good. Fat tastes good. Like foods that have a lot of added, saturated fat. Yeah, that's why they taste good. But look at that. Those are some things. Not all fat is bad, obviously. Avocados are a great source of healthy fats. And then that added sugar. So this is the one that I think is so hard for people to get a grip on because it's in everything. So your salad dressings, your condiments, things that are not even sweet. Like you will look at something and think, oh, this is, I don't know, pretzels. And there'll be, added sugar in it or something like that. Sugar also has about 1 billion different names. So getting more label educated, maybe that's something in the future we provide you with that information, but like read labels and make those small little changes. The last thing I would say is fresh, even if it's or homemade, I guess is the better phrase. A homemade cookie is going to be healthier than a store-bought cookie. So, because it's not going to have all the preservatives, the additives, the things that keep its shelf stable. You're going to make those cookies and your family's going to eat them in like 48 hours. So they're fresh, they use real ingredients, things like that. So when in doubt, try to make it yourself, try to look for the freshest food, quality over convenience. And I know that's tough sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Great advice. Thank you. All right, Jim, toolbox talk question. This person says, we do toolbox talks with trade partners each week on the job site. Besides keeping people safe, what other benefits do those safety meetings bring the company?
Great question. I kind of alluded to this, so I won't take as much time, but first and foremost, it just makes us proactive. We have these conversations before anything bad has happened, right? And the whole idea is to prevent it from happening, keep safety top of mind. The second thing is it gives us a chance, like I mentioned earlier, to establish or reestablish the PPE standards for on job site, which at Stansell is, if you're on our construction site, you've got to have your PPE on. There is no decision-making or gray area because we want to take that out of the process. Sometimes people can innocently make bad decisions. So we want to take that out and just say, you're on our site, wear your PPE. That helps us avoid worse safety conversations later on. It educates the people on the job site, either reminds them of the hazards of the safety situation, or in some cases you learn something that you didn't know before. And one of the things that we didn't talk a lot about, but we definitely know, is it protects Stansell construction. We've spent the whole time, and rightfully so, talking about protecting our people and people's well-being. But there's another side to this coin, which is protecting Stansell. And what I mean by that is protecting Stansell from OSHA and protecting Stansell from our insurance company, because they can both, we can be fined by OSHA, but the insurance company can raise our rates. And we're blessed to work for a leadership team that, if given the choice, would we rather pay the money toward OSHA and the insurance company, or would we rather reinvest that in the company and the people? And I know the answer to that from having worked with you, Angelica, and our leadership team, that the answer, hands down, is you'd much rather reinvest that money in the company and the people than be paying higher rates to or fines to OSHA and the insurance company. So, and we've had toolbox talks actually bail us out where there was an accident on our job with a trade partner, and the insurance company asked if we had any documentation to support that we had went over the safety hazard. Thank God we did. And it was the difference between getting us off the hook, so to speak, or the insurance company going, well, you know what? There was no conversation. You definitely have some accountability in what happened here. So we don't want to be seen as a chore. We want to see it as something that's beneficial, not only keeping everybody safe, but don't forget about protecting Stansell.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Jim. All right. Finally, the last question, Jim, I'll let you keep the floor first, but it's to both of you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received or given in your respective fields?
Wow. That's such, I've been blessed to be given a ton of great advice, but I'll keep it safety related for the topic. But Somebody told me a long time ago, they don't call them on purposes, they call them accidents, and you rarely see accidents coming. So that just always speaks to the proactive nature. And I go back to the seatbelt analogy. Like you put the seatbelt on in the car, not because you fully expect to get in a car accident today. It's just in case something happens. It's the same thing with wearing your hard hat, your safety glasses. You put it on just in case because you're not going to see it coming. And I will add another one in there, and I think this one speaks to health and safety. There's a great quote: if you really want something, you'll find a way, and if not, you'll find an excuse.
Amen. Great stuff, Jim. Thank you. All right, Nikki, I'll turn it to you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received or given?
Like Jim, I've gotten a lot of really good advice over the years. But one piece that I got and I also give people is your journey is your journey. When it comes to changing your health, comparing yourself to the person on Instagram, comparing yourself to your neighbor, to your cousin, whoever, is not going to help you succeed in that goal. So one, your journey is your journey. And two, not everyone is going to support you, and not everyone is going to be, they're going to judge you, right? You decide to go and start jogging. Who cares? Like, let them judge you. Let them, have their own narrative about things. Your journey is your journey. You set your goals, you work that plan, and it's like anything else, right? Stay focused on the plan, what your goal is, how you're going to get there, and find the people that will support you. But you don't compare them. Comparison it will kill any plan.
100%. That's great. Well, thank you both again, not just for being a part of this episode, but for the work you do every day to keep people safe, healthy, and supported. You've been both amazing to the Stansell team, and it's been great, working with you both. And then to everyone listening, we hope that these conversations have inspired you to think differently about health and safety. And just a reminder that it's not just about checking a box, it's about showing up for yourself and the people around you day in and day out. So Beyond the Build, our theme for this week is about going deeper, and that starts with asking why, not just what. So we hope you all get really involved this week, watch the videos, engage with the content, find ways to implement what you need into your life. And we promise it will make all of the difference. So thank you again, Nikki and Jim. Thanks for listening to the Stansell Blueprint, and have a happy health and safety week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.